All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we are going to be looking at the soldiers and the doctors during the Civil War. Exactly what kind of stuff the doctors did, what were the requirements to be a doctor, and basically the kind of what the soldiers had to go through, and it's not like they show in the movies, and things like that when they get shot and they're like, oh, and the doctors are doing this operation and just on the person and things like that. I'm going to tell you how it really was, and things like that. And um, the key thing to truly appreciate this lesson is to put yourself in not only the doctor's shoes but also the soldiers. Um, and we're gonna bust a myth. Well, I should say I'm gonna bust a myth um, about stuff that a lot of people hear and they tend to believe because they've heard so much about it in their whole lives, and they think, "Oh, it has to be true. Oh, yeah, that makes sense." Um, so again, we're gonna bust that mandala. You know, Remember, that's a theme this year to break down those mandalas, those things you guys hear about. You think it's true, but it's really not. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Um, the first thing, we're going to go through the objectives, which is analyze the significance of doctors at or near the battlefield. Examine the requirements to be a doctor. We're going to talk about that for a little bit. And then we're going to create an argument on what would be the best way to handle the pain of surgery, of amputations without um, painkillers. Okay. All right. So your first question is, um, you see three soldiers right here. Okay. The first question is, which one do you think had the worst injury to have? Was it the soldier with the two legs missing, the one with two arms missing, or the one who's like missing at least one, leg, an arm, whatever, but they're reliant on something like a crutch, which is, they have the other arm, leg, whatever, but the thing is, they're missing one appendage. So, which one do you think um, was the worst one? The second question asks you, um, which one do you think had a harder life after the Civil War? Do you think it would be the guy missing both legs, the guy missing both arms, or the guy who's just missing one, whether it's one leg, one arm? Okay. And another thing too, a lot of students have asked me, is this guy in the middle, the one with no arms, is that his hands in the middle? No, because they couldn't wear backpacks, things like that. Because again, they have no arms, and sometimes it cut up to the shoulder up here. So like, let me take this off real quick. It got cut to right here, so it's like if they try to wear like something like a backpack, it would just like slide right off. You know, so a lot of times they had it stuffed in their clothing. Whatever it may have been, papers, letters, whatever. Somebody would stuff it in there for them, and they would just say, it's right there. You know, so pause the video, write your response. What do you believe? Okay, but we're going to be moving on in three, two, one. All right, so here's the thing. Nowadays, when someone's a doctor, they have to go to school for years. They have to go to school, become, get their degree. Then they become like a resident. They're there at the hospital, basically like an intern. And then after some time, then they become like a doctor and stuff like that, full-fledged uh, doctor. The thing is, during the Civil War, that wasn't the case. Doctors were needed. Surgeons, especially surgeons, were needed. So what they did was they basically said, okay, if you spend some time with some doctors, a physician, somebody like that, and you've taken at least a few courses in college for medical, classes, you qualify. That's all we need from you. The thing is, you have to remember, not all doctors do the same thing. Some doctors are specialists. Some doctors focus on the ears, nose, and throat. Some doctors focus on like your foot. You know, to them it didn't matter. Hey, you took some classes. You know something about the medical field. You spent some time with the doctor. Learning from them. That's all we need from you. So let's go. So as you can guess, a lot of these people who were coming into the medical field were not experienced. They were just like basically plucked and told whether your country needs you, to be a doctor to help out these soldiers. How are you going to say no to that? That you could save some lives. So that's also another reason why people become doctors is to help and to save lives and things like that. And at a war, you're needed. So a lot of them did. Now here's the thing: amputations were kind of like an easy thing to do, so it became very common for them to do that. This picture you see right here, this is a traditional doctor's kit. As you can see, there's some tweezers. There's a little pick thing to dig out some stuff. There's a little kind of a little scraper type of thing to get skin, muscle, things like that. But as you can see on top, the bone saw. Okay, now if you look at those little teeth, a lot of them, if you notice, they're really small and they're compacted. Because that's what they need to get a good cut. Things like that. The problem was this is a doctor's kit, and not every single one of them had a kit. So sometimes the doctors had to use what was near them, and a lot of times doctors used saws that were basically like the ones you would use for a tree. Now those teeth on those saws, they are like higher up. They're not like small as you see from there. They're more higher up and they're spread apart. So it's like really digging in there. Because again, when you cut a branch, it's the tree's not gonna scream. But with those type of saws on bone, cutting through, muscle and skin and some of that, yeah, it's gonna be painful. Okay. Um, so that's the difference between a professional tools and basically again whatever they had around them, which was usually with the bone saws. They used the saws for trees. All right, here's your first question. Okay, you are a soldier, you're wounded, you're injured, arm, leg, whichever one you said was the worst one for that warm-up picture. So if you said the arms, your arm is wounded. If you said legs, your leg is wounded. Okay, the doctor tells you, if we amputate your arm, leg, whatever you said was the worst one, if we cut it off, you have a really high percentage of surviving. Okay, but we can't give you any type of painkiller. The flip side is if you wait for surgery for them so they can take their time to take out the bullet, things like that, we can give you a painkiller, maybe, but your chances of survival is 10 to 20%. And you might be able to keep your arm or leg. Okay. What do you do? What do you personally choose? Hey, give me the best chance to survive, even though I'm going to feel every single cut and thing like that, or wait and you might maybe get some type of painkiller, but your chances of survival is very, very low. What do you do? What decision do you take? Okay. And the second one, with the surgery, you more likely will be able to save your leg, arm, whichever it is, but again, your chances of survival really, really low. Okay, so what do you do? If you don't know how to start off this sentence, the writing prompt's on the bottom. I believe I would decide to have the surgery. I believe I would decide to be amputated because, and explain. Okay, so pause the video, go ahead, start writing. But we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, well, why would it take so long to have the surgery? Because you have to remember, thousands of soldiers are coming in at one time. Once the battle starts, they're bringing out the wounded, you know. Um, and a lot of times, like I said, the amputation became so frequent that it became a common thing. Like, let's just chop it off, you know. So during the Civil War, there was around 600,000 surgeries on both sides. If you combine them all, there's about 600,000. Three-quarters of them. So out of every four, three surgeries were amputations. In total, the 26.3% of those people who had the amputations, they died. Now, they didn't die because, not always, that the doctor messed up, things like that. Sometimes the patient went into shock when they were cutting, the person screaming, yelling, and, and then they just go into shock, you know. Sometimes the doctor does mess up. They cut an artery and the person bleeds out, you know. Um, it happens sometimes even when they do surgery and they stitch, it back up, things like that. They didn't really clean it very well, and that can get to diseases, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. So there's variations, different things of why soldiers died during the surgeries and things like that. Now, the Union, the North, they had 90 qualified surgeons. The South only had 24. Now, I've had a lot of students ask me, well, why does the North have more and the South have less? Again, from last semester, excuse me, you have to remember, in the South, the number one thing they cared about was agriculture. Okay, so these guys who had a big family, they would have their sons, you know, um, basically to have kids to help out in the farm. Yeah, they had a bunch of slaves, things like that, but not everyone had slaves. Okay, the big plantations definitely had slaves, and as you get the smaller and smaller plantations, the odds of them having slaves got smaller and smaller. So people who had a little plot of land, chances are they didn't have enough money to buy a slave. If they did, they maybe had a one or two. Excuse me. Um, but their kids are the ones who went out and worked on the fields. You know, so a lot of times when they went to get their education, it was just basically read, write, and that's it, math. You know, the people in the north, they had factories and things like that. So their kids, they wanted them to kind of like be educated, stuff like that, become lawyers, doctors, things like that. So they kind of emphasize more education, whereas in the South it was more like go to work in the fields, things like that. And yeah, go learn to read and write and some math, but that's about it. Once in a while, hey, yeah, we got some money for you to go be a doctor or be a lawyer or something. But that was far and in between. Okay. Now, here's the thing, a lot of doctors had books like this, step by step, how to do something, how to check for this, how to cut this and that to, you know, um, save someone's arm or leg or whatever it may be. Now, it's sad, but it's true. Some of these doctors were so inexperienced, they had to have the book right there as they're cutting someone's arm or leg and seeing, okay, so this is how I do it. Okay, cut here, fold this, sew this. Because again, they were inexperienced. Okay, so imagine a soldier who's about to be cut, and the doctor has a book looking through the pages, trying to find, okay, this is how I would save this person's arm, or how I would amputate their leg to save them. They have to have the book right there. So it doesn't bring most confidence in most people if your doctor has to have a step-by-step book with them. All right, so now in this question, you are the doctor. And like I said, at one time, I mean, hundreds of people could be coming in, sometimes 10, 20, but sometimes when it's a big battle, hundreds of people are coming in. Um, so you're a doctor, you got four people coming to you. One person has a gunshot to the stomach. One person's leg got hit by a cannon to where the leg is kind of like dangling. Another person has multiple shots, 2 to 4 shots in one arm. Some of the bullets are still in there, but they're bleeding like crazy. The last person has a big cut across their face from a sword where like part of their skin's like opened up and you could like see the muscle and stuff like that. My question is to you, who would you help first? Who would be second, third, and fourth? You don't have to write out gunshot to the stomach first, um, multiple gunshots to the arm second. You could just put the numbers 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, that's cool. It's the second part is what I want to know. Why do you put them in that order? Especially number one. Why do you put that person ahead of everyone else? Okay, so go ahead. Remember, this is what you personally, if you were the doctor and you had these four people coming to you, who would you help first, second, third, and fourth? Okay, what you personally think. Okay, so go ahead, write. Um, but we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right. So speaking of amputations, this is one of my favorite stories. Um, General Daniel Sickles. This guy is at Gettysburg and he's telling people, hey, you go over here, you go over here, adjust these cannons, things like that. And what happens is, as he's looking at the battlefield, things like that, a cannonball hits and then it basically swipes him, knocks him head over heels, bam, hits the ground. His men come to him and they're like, oh my God, his leg is busted. So they take him to the medical tent, and the doctor is going to like amputate him. And he basically tells the doctor, "Don't throw my leg away. Give it to the Army Medical College, and let them see how a leg is busted from a cannonball. That way, the students can see. They can go over it, things like that." The doctor's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." So the doctor's like, "All right." So he takes off the leg, and he does give it to the Army Medical College. And the thing is, they put it on display. They actually have it there for a long time. And you have to remember, this is the whole leg. It's not just the bone and this and that, like you see right there. It's the whole leg with the foot. And as time goes on, as you guys may or may not know, when meat is out in the open, in the sun, it doesn't stay fresh long. It starts to wilt and look nasty and things like that. That's exactly what happens to this leg. It's because there's no blood being sent through to it. It starts to get kind of a greenish, grayish color. The muscle and skin and all that starts to like kind of fall off, and people have to clean it up. And you just can imagine the smell of decaying flesh in this container every time someone had to open it and clean all that stuff up. It's just nastiness. Okay. Eventually, they did take off the the meat, the muscle and stuff like that from the leg, and it's still there to this day. You can actually see it just like this at the Army Medical College in Washington, D.C. Okay. Now, here's that thing I was telling you about, painkillers. It's in its infancy. There really isn't any painkiller. I believe Tylenol or like Advil or ibuprofen, or that is like several years away. Morphine, it's just barely introduced. Now, the thing I've heard since I was a little kid was that, oh, when someone's shot and this and that, oh, you just give them some whiskey and oh, they'll be, you can do what you need to do. And I saw it in movies and some of that as a kid growing up. They just, drink the bottle of whiskey, like, okay, do it. Oh, here's the thing though. That's not true. And the thing is, a lot of people believe it to be true because they're like, oh, you know what? You person drinks, they're going to be numb. They can, not be as in much pain, because of the numbness. I know you guys don't drink, um, but the thing is, whiskey doesn't work instantaneously. It takes time. And sometimes these people did not have time to sit and wait for the whiskey to take effect and things like that and how much whiskey they would drink. Everyone's tolerance is different. So to say, oh yeah, they just drink whiskey and then it was a painkiller. No. Again, like I said, when I told you guys to pick your four, maybe the number fourth person, maybe they might be able to get some type of whiskey where it would, if they drank it right away, they might be okay. Maybe. We don't know. Because again, everyone's tolerance is different. Um, but the thing is, even the whiskey ran out. You know, they ran out of whiskey, so there was no painkillers. So a lot of these times, the guys had to be held down while the doctor cut. So you could just imagine if you ever stubbed your toe and you're like, oh my God, oh, that hurt. Imagine someone cutting your leg off, your arm off. How many people would it take to hold you down as they did that? Imagine the pain, the excruciating pain of feeling that saw go through the bone. You know, this is what I mean, that you really can understand this lesson if you feel it, if you can just put yourself in these soldiers' shoes for a minute and just imagine someone cutting your arm or your leg off. No painkillers whatsoever. You can just feel the tear as they go through it. And how many people would it take to hold you down so that you wouldn't move? Because if you moved and the doctor kept cutting and they accidentally cut an artery, which did happen, you could bleed out and die. You're just reacting to what they're doing, but it could cost you your life. And I don't know anyone who could just stand there going, cut my arm off, doc. Yeah, yeah. With no type of painkillers or stuff like that, or numbing agents or anything like that. No, you're going to fight and you're going to, move at least something, you know. So that's the thing. And yes, they were given stuff to bite down on. A lot of times it was wood, pieces of chunks of wood they would put in their back teeth. If you ever watch them in the movies and you see them do, kind of like on the front teeth, total lies. They would shatter their front teeth. The stronger teeth are back there, your back teeth. So when they bit down, those back teeth would, hit, not the front. The front would shatter, especially with no painkillers. Okay. Now we talked about diseases. One of the biggest things that happened during the surgeries was gangrene. Okay. I don't know if you guys ever heard about it or not, but basically it's living tissue, whether it's your skin, muscle, even the bone, the blood vessels, is basically dead and it's rotting, it's decaying, it's festering. And it doesn't just stop because this gangrene is basically like a bacteria, a fungus, a type of thing. It just eats and it grows. And it can go from one finger to another to your hand and just keep going. To the point where you can no longer feel that hand because it's basically dead. The cells, the blood vessels, the muscle, it's dead. It's gone. And the thing is, it smells like rotten cheese. Like really bad rotten cheese. If you ever had like cream cheese sit in the back of your fridge, things like that, and you opened it and smelled it, it's like, oh my God. That's basically, in a sense, kind of like gangrene. Okay. The bad thing about it is that you can get it anywhere. Feet, legs, arms, wherever. But once it gets into your blood system, because again, remember, it's looking for healthy cells to eat and this basically destroy. Once it gets to your heart, that's it. Because remember, your heart pumps blood everywhere else to your body. And if they don't get to it in time, where a lot of it's already going through your blood system, you're basically a walking dead person. So it's not something to take lightly. People still die from it today because they think, "Oh, I'm good." It's just a cut, or this and that, and they don't take care of it. They don't clean it. They don't bandage it, and it can grow. It can get really bad. Same thing with bed sores. With the older people when they have been sitting too long, things like that in one position, one spot, especially in their beds, they get bed sores, and that can get worse, and they can eventually get to gangrene if not treated, if they're not moved, and things like that. Okay. Um, so gangrene wasn't the only thing. Other soldiers died from other stuff too, as well. Flu, fever. Because again, medication was very limited because of the war, and there just wasn't enough doctors and nurses to care for every single soldier. Okay. Now we've come to the final questions, the exit ticket. Remember, answer one of these questions. Why would it be important for doctors to be at or near the battlefield? Okay. Second question. Do you think a lot of soldiers died because of the lack of requirements needed to be a doctor? That doctors had little to no experience, actually treating a person, things like that. Do you think that's why a lot of soldiers died, or think it was other stuff? And lastly, without painkillers, morphine and things like that, what do you think would be the best way to handle the pain during amputations? What do you think? Do you think just simply biting on wood and leather would it be the best way? You know, you tell me. What do you think would be the best? Okay. So once you're finished with the exit ticket, you are done with this lesson. I really hope that you did, take a moment to actually like put yourselves in these people's shoes, the doctors and the soldiers. And like I said, you really can appreciate this lesson a lot more and appreciate these soldiers, what they've gone through in the past by putting yourselves in their shoes. And I hope, especially this lesson, like I said, a lot of students do with this lesson, feel what it was like, and they do show more of appreciation. So I hope you guys were able to do that today. Okay. So that's it. You guys take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys next week.